know your way around a P&L. And if you can influence business decisions based on how they will impact bottom line performance, you will win. It's about changing this mentality that marketing is just arts and crafts and fun and all these, creative minds coming together. It's not. It is a growth driver.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Behind the Franchise. I am your host, Paul Ellinger. And as always, we've got another really great brand builder and marketer on the show who's going to take us behind her journey, her process, and everything she's up to today. So everyone, please welcome Felicia Reeves to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on this beautiful spring day, at least here in Cincinnati. Hopefully you guys have beautiful weather there on the East Coast as well. So Felicia, just before we kind of get into the thick of it, maybe give us the lay of the land. Tell us, your journey into becoming the CMO of Empower Brands and what's all led you there to get to this point.
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about this a little bit today and have been actually a lot quite recently. I'm about 90 days into my role here as Chief Marketing Officer at Empower Brands, and thinking about my story and the path to getting here. It has certainly not been linear for me, but thinking way back, so about 20 years ago, when I had one of my very first jobs, it was actually with a franchise and working with a husband and wife team, and I think just seeing, business owners in it every day, working together in a scrappy way, I'll put it, was I would say both inspirational and aspirational, and is certainly a part of my story to where I'm at today. But after college, I was kind of thinking about, okay, what do I want to do with my life? And I've always been a self-starter. I started my own business actually as a college student that did pretty well. It went global, really by accident.
Just a little blasé about starting a global business in college, I guess, whatever.
Yeah, I had a much different college experience than many. I think my college roommates hated me because I was always, sitting in our room with the lights out, behind my computer, wheeling and dealing. But was an entrepreneur, always have had that, self-starter mindset. And after college, luckily had the opportunity to kind of just pause and say, okay, what do I want to do with my life? And, bought into a franchise system myself. And so I was a franchisee way before I knew much about franchising at all. I had no idea what I was getting into at the time. I had a sports performance and training facility. And so I was training, my college education was in kinesiology. And so that kind of carried over, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so I was training youth and adult athletes with a large franchise system out of New Jersey. And, I think that experience, and even before that, being a business owner myself, you really do have to, as I'll say it again, get really scrappy. And you're not just, wearing that hat as an operator and a business owner every day, but you do have to put on a marketing hat, and you do have to
every single hat.
You're wearing so many different hats throughout the day and really figuring out how you're going to grow, right? And so that's really where I kind of stepped into the marketing world, and I learned I was pretty good at it. I was able to grow to grow the business, but it just felt natural to me. And I say that because I work with our franchisees today. I'm back in the franchising space about 15 years later, and it can be really challenging and confusing. And marketing, luckily, when I had started, wasn't as much of a black box as it is today, and it wasn't as rapidly.
A lot more data, a lot more technology today.
Totally,
that's confusing people for sure.
Totally. So it was a lot easier, I think, to, kind of find your way in the marketing world, and it wasn't as saturated or as expensive as it is today. But back to my story, owned and operated the business for a few years, sold that successfully, and really was able to, again, kind of think about, okay, what do I want to do with my life? And marketing really was kind of that thread that had been pulled through sitting in my college dorm room, owning and operating a franchise location. And then so I moved into really the corporate world. So have held various positions in the marketing verticals, which, I think has led me to this opportunity today, where I've been able to kind of glean experience through creative, through brand building, through digital, through marketing operations, to really now lead this really high performing team in a best in class franchise system here at Empower Brands.
Yeah, that's awesome. And maybe a little bit of curveball to start us off because you just made me think of it. But I think it's something we see a lot. Marketing, people are a little scared of it, right? And to your point, it is this black box. There is so many inputs and outputs, and it's really hard to get right. And it becomes this kind of emotional thing, right? They're scared to put themselves out there. They're scared to waste the money. They may not see the results immediately because it is an investment that's going to take months. You obviously found a way to overcome that personally. How do you take those experiences and give them to franchisees and the franchise system with Empower?
Yeah, I think it's about building trust and confidence, right, as a partner. And I think one of my missions here as chief marketing officer is to really serve our franchisees in a way that they do see us as strategic partners. And so
Yeah.
I think and I know this from experience, and I think that this tracks with our franchisees today. It's your livelihood. It is your
Yeah.
life savings
Yeah.
that is on the line. It's your family. It's how you're putting dinner on the table today and next week and the week after. And so I get it. And so I think it's helping drive strategy, execution, and really simplifying this really complex space,
Yeah.
to drive more of a partnership with our franchisees and to simplify the scary, I'll say,
Yeah.
to really help them grow their businesses.
Yeah, I love that, and diving more into Empower, right? I think your role I find so interesting, right? Like having what is it? It's 10 brands, correct, under Empower. Like
Correct.
having 10 brands underneath you, similar industry, but still very unique brands, very different operators, very different people. How do you think about that? What are the challenges, as you're looking at these 10 brands and trying to obviously leverage resources across them, but also embracing the uniqueness of each of them.
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge, but it's a fun one
Yeah.
for me. I come from the multi-brand space, and so I think what I've learned over the years works really well is, acknowledging that each brand, it does have its own audience,
Hmm.
the customer life cycles and its own voice, right? And
Yeah.
so the challenge ultimately becomes scaling strategy
Mm.
without forcing sameness. And so, here at Empower, we've built a system that really respects, but also I'll use the word protects
Yeah.
the integrity of our brands, while also creating leverage through shared tools and partners, insights, best practices. And so I think it's about setting up a really high performing a high performing framework and
Yeah.
having freedom within that framework to
Yeah.
grow and scale each of our individual brands.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a ton of sense, and a part of me maybe challenging you slightly. I would assume the framework is in place; it works 90% of the time. Like, what are instances you've seen where it's like, for whatever reason, this brand is performing differently in this one vertical of marketing or something, and how do you go and address that, right? Because I think there are those differences that do probably impact some of that framework you're putting in place.
Yeah, totally. And I think now more than ever with a lot of the
Hmm.
macroeconomic, challenges and uncertainty, there's a lot of volatility within
Yeah,
that framework. And
I can imagine.
yeah, and it comes down to, okay, are you troubleshooting first and foremost? Are you
Sure.
working the framework?
Right.
Yes or no? That leads you down two different paths. If the answer is yes, and we're still experiencing challenges, it goes into, how are we leveraging data to
Hmm.
really help drive pivots and a change in strategy to ensure
Hmm.
that we are helping our franchisees get back on the right path. And
Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of patience within that too, but I also think that there is the need to focus on using actionable
Mhm.
insights, right? I think a lot of people say, well, look what the data is telling you.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily know what to do with it. And so I
Right.
think it's helping again kind of simplify, okay, if this, then this is where we need to go to
Yeah.
correct the course that we're on.
Yeah, the way I always approach data, I feel like there's a few layers. There's like data visibility, which is its own unique challenge. Everybody
Yep.
has to be able to see it. They have to be able to understand it, and then it's like, okay, cool. What the heck does it matter? Like, what do
Yeah.
we do now, right? Because it's like doesn't matter how pretty the dashboard is if there's no action coming out of it.
Totally, totally. And I think a lot of companies and marketers too say, we're data driven, we're data rich, but ultimately, if you're not actioning on it, and if you're not actioning on it the right way,
Yeah.
it means nothing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's very interesting, and I think it's always a challenge within marketing, right? Of balancing that data-driven performance while also maintaining some of that brand creativity and expression, right? And I
Hmm.
think hearing how you talk about that, like I could tell you value both, but how do you push that? How do you, make sure that hey, like we are true to the brand and we are true to the data at the same time? Because sometimes I feel those can be antithetical to each other.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it comes down to monitoring, how the brand is growing and
Hmm.
evolving. And I think if you become too, I'll say, paralyzed by the data or too deep into the weeds, you start to lose action. And so I think it's finding a balance around, okay, is the business continuing to evolve, to mature, to
Yeah,
gain market share,
yeah,
or are we just sitting, behind our desks every day and analyzing a bunch of things and not actually putting them into action? So I think it's this balance of tracking performance, what's driving that performance, and then doing something about it, which, I think goes back to what I had said earlier.
yeah. I think I love the use of the word action. I feel like so much of stress and anxiety is solved by action, right? And
Mm.
I'm curious, like how much do you harken back to your early days, right? You're starting this company, you're buying a franchise when you're fairly young, like um, kind of feeds into you as a CMO now, right? Where it's just like, hey, I've been there, guys. Well, the way we get through this is by going through it and doing the thing,
Yeah.
right? Like, how much do you harken back to that?
Yeah, I think a lot. And I've always used the words fail fast,
Yeah,
right? And so I think
yeah.
it is about, and it's a little bit of bravery
Yeah,
too.
100%,
One of
right?
one of
Somebody's responsible at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, one of my old CEOs, always used to say, we've got to be brave and we've got
Yeah.
to take chances and make, decisions, and
Mhm.
they might be the right or wrong ones, but it again, it goes back to, okay, what do we want to do? How are we going to track it and understand if it's working or not? And if it's not, great, let's pivot. But it's
Yeah.
about, to your point, it's actioning, good or bad. And so
Yeah.
it's a little bit of bravery, it's a little bit of failing fast, and it's taking chances.
Yeah. You use so much like tech startup language. It's kind of it's making me laugh a little bit. I'm just like I feel like I'm talking to another like technology founder, so I love it. That's always fun. Um, Speaking on the bravery, I think about this one a lot too myself, where it's like I think it's easier for us in a way when we're in the C-suite because we have agency to make decisions, right?
Hmm.
How do you induce that same philosophy into the team you're building, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you may be the most junior person, but you need them to still be brave. You need them to still act boldly. How do you go about building the team in a way to enable that?
Yeah, that's such a deep question. It's goes so many layers deep, I
Yeah.
think, but I think it comes down to first leadership, right? Are you setting your team up for success to fail?
Yep.
And have you set really clear expectations with the team around, what it is that you want them to come in and execute on every
Mhm.
day? And some of that is, let's be honest about our failures, move away
Sure.
from them, and let's
Yeah.
try. So I think it's level setting with the team and expectation setting. And I think too, I have a monthly department meeting that
Mhm.
I've stood up with my new team here at Empower, and one of the initial things that I say as we start these meetings off is, come assuming positive intent and also come with curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think that some of that bravery does, and pushing the boundaries in the most junior level, and then scaling up across the team, it does start with, in part, curiosity. And are
Mhm.
you curious enough to
Yeah.
ask the types of questions that might evoke a failure or a win somewhere? But it's being curious enough to push those boundaries and then being brave enough to actually do it,
Yeah.
and supported, through your leadership team.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, right? Like getting people to feel like it's okay to fail is one step, and then getting to be okay failing fast is another step, and it's
Hmm.
just enabling that culture though gets exciting because then things just move faster and are fun.
Yeah, I think it's about, building and operating in a high performance culture, which might also be, a techie thing to say.
Yeah, you're about to reference the '92 Bulls and Michael Jordan right now, you
Yeah.
know.
But I do think with building a high performing team,
Mm,
you do have to, level set with the team around, hey, if there's going to be things that don't work and that's okay.
yeah,
And just making them, comfortable with that because it is
yeah.
uncomfortable.
Nobody bats 1,000, right?
Yeah.
Um, I love that. Diving into the framework a little more, I'm always curious. So, like, I can tell you're very analytically driven. I'm assuming each brand has metrics they're trying to hit. Are those metrics the same across every single brand within Empower Brands, or are there unique lagging indicators that you're working with by brand?
Yeah, so both.
Mm,
So there are a core set of KPIs and benchmarks that we're really,
sure.
constantly working toward across several different marketing verticals.
Hmm.
But then the ones that really differ come down to, we'll call it brand maturity.
Sure.
And so, within Empower Brands, we have emerging brands or incubation brands.
Okay.
We also refer to them as that are new systems we're really still working on developing and maturing and gaining market share. And so they have a much different set of
Sure.
benchmarks and KPIs that we're really focusing on
Mhm.
than our older brands that are much more mature and have some more of that market share. So it really varies.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I love the word incubation. That's fun. What do you guys call the more legacy brands? Do they have a unique name like incubation?
Legacy brands, I
Legacy.
would say. Yeah.
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 Okay. With that kind of knowing the nuance between incubation and legacy, do you have brands that you would consider more experimental, where you're like willing to try things that you're like, yeah, let's try it here, and not because the brand is worse or anything, but it's because they can execute faster on a new idea or whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
Like, do you have that inside the system, and how have you seen that benefit the system as a whole?
Yeah, we do, and I would say it's a little bit more organic.
Mm,
It's not as systematized today,
sure.
and I think it depends on, okay, what are we trying to test? Does it
Hmm.
make sense in a market? Does it make sense in an industry, right?
Yeah.
So, is there a test that we should deploy in the roofing space versus the commercial cleaning space, right?
Hmm.
Both two different sectors of
Yeah.
our platform here, and so I think it depends on what it is we're trying to learn, and then figuring out, okay, where do we actually deploy that?
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. How much frenemy competition happens between the brands? Because I think that's such a powerful tool, right? Where there is
Yeah.
data transparency. And do you see an induction of competition, in a positive manner happening?
Within our platform, I think of it less as competition and more of it as opportunity for our
Yeah,
franchisees, which is a very diplomatic thing to say.
sure. Yeah, you have to be way more diplomatic in this conversation than I have to be. So I respect that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the opportunity, and I'm not BSing here. I think it really does come down to being able to create co-branding opportunities for our
Yeah.
franchise owners, right? And so roofing and insulation, they go very nicely together.
Yeah.
Lawn care and irrigation go very nicely together. And so I
Yeah.
think we have in some cases franchise owners that have multiple systems that
Sure.
they own and operate. And then we also have within territories and regions, operators that work together to co-brand, which is, a very exciting endeavor that we are currently working through.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the cross sell, the upsell, right? Like, how intentional is that? Are we, in a roofing cell, after a roofing cell is closed, are we pushing insulation? Like, is that intentional across all the brands?
We're working toward that, and that's the goal, is to make it seamless
Yeah.
and automated, right? So
Hmm.
even our franchisees don't necessarily have to even be the ones thinking about it. So
Yeah.
putting systems and tools in place for them to automate is really the end goal. I would say today it's a little bit fragmented, and that does
Yeah.
come down to the age of the system, the age of the franchisee owner, how
Sure.
long
Yeah.
they've been doing this for, and just how comfortable they are
Hmm.
selling a roof and then going on to upsell something
It's
else
hard
is
enough to sell
quite
your
a
own stuff, you
challenge.
know?
Yeah. So I think that's where enablement, and that's where we really come in
Yeah.
to support them. So that will continuously evolve, I would say, over the next couple of years.
Okay, so this is a very out of pocket, not out of pocket, out of left field question.
Mhm.
So, I've been in the venture space for the last decade. I've seen a ton of companies try to be this like all-in-one home improvement, right? Like you can call every
Hmm.
contractor you need. You guys are getting to a place, where it's like you've got a solution for all these different parts of a house, right? Is
Hmm.
there a world 10 years, 20 years where you have a consumer app and it's the Empower Your Home consumer app, and
Hmm.
the brand almost doesn't matter anymore, right? It's just like I need my roof fixed, I need my insulation fixed, I need this fixed. Do you see a future like that where it's like you just have the services in one place for the consumer?
Yeah, and I think, I've been in the home and commercial services industry for the last several years, and I think that's always the question is, can you
Yeah.
create a whole home solution
Hmm.
for our customers, especially younger generations that do want
Hear
a
me out.
hyper
I'm
virtual.
right there.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it all.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I think as consumer behavior shifts, probably,
Yeah.
I think where we're at right now, if you look at some of our competitors in the platform space, we really stand behind our mission to
Hmm.
put our franchisees first. And
Yeah.
we are a franchisee first platform. And so I think that creating a whole home solution, it almost puts the franchisee second, right? Because
Sure.
you're starting to focus on who that end consumer is and what we're doing for them, which might be the total right thing to do. But
Yeah.
I think then as an organization, it just comes down to, okay, what are our beliefs and how do they shift or how do they start
Yeah.
to shift to make that possible?
Yeah, I just find it fascinating because it does feel like there's a world someday where that exists, right? And I
Yeah.
think people are approaching it from such very different angles. And you guys have the breadth, the expertise, the talent, as compared to the tech companies that are just like, sure, they can build a great app, but they don't have
Yeah.
access to everything you have access to. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I think COVID changed everything, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there was this pull forward of demand. So from a consumer standpoint, in the service space, things were booming for the
Yeah.
last several years. And
Yeah.
I think also we learned, okay, what do consumers need and not need
Hmm.
when we are rendering a service for them? So it's totally changed and I think expedited the
Yeah.
path that we would have been on had it not happened.
Yeah, that's super cool. Um, so okay, also curious here. You've started a company, you've bought a small franchise, and you step in as the CMO of $1 billion plus sales organization. Like, whoa, right? Like, what are you feeling?
Yeah.
How excited are you? Just talk to me about the opportunity. It seems like such a just a cool job to have.
Yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity and one that I'm thrilled about.
Yeah,
So much so that we even went as far as relocating my family.
heck
I've
yeah,
got two kids from the Philadelphia area down here to Richmond, Virginia, just in the
yeah.
last 2 or 3 weeks. So it
Oh
has
well,
been
congrats on the move. Hopefully it went well.
thank you. Yeah, it did. But it's been a massive undertaking for
Yeah,
sure.
I can imagine. Yeah.
But it's one that I'm, like I said, just so thrilled about. I think
Hmm.
that going back to my roots and supporting business owners, which has always been a thread in my career as
Yeah.
well, it's been working with business owners in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
So I think, going back to my franchising roots, but staying core to what I've loved, both marketing and working with business owners,
Yeah.
I think it's an exceptional fit. So,
Yeah.
this is an organization that I joined because I really believed in the mission and the culture that's
Hmm.
here, and everything has really stood up to some of my beliefs during the
That's
vetting
awesome.
process. So it's been a fun ride so far.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm happy for you. So this is as the audience may or may not know, we always record our episodes in batches. It just makes my life easier when we can do them all at once. So I was talking to Lynn Blashford, the CMO of White Castle, yesterday, and that's such a unique brand. It's 104 years old, which I don't know
Hmm.
if I'm the only one who was blown away by that, but Empower's getting there, right? Like I think it's Architect that's from 1980. Like that's a few decades, right? Like how do you think about cultivating these brands that are very legacy, very old, versus these incubation brands that may be 2, 3, 4, 5 years old?
Hmm.
Um, they're obviously at different stages. How do you, as CMO, empower both of them to continue their growths? Whereas a successful year for one maybe 10%, and a successful year for another maybe 150%.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think when it comes to really driving growth for both that are on two different ends of the spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nascent and mature or legacy, we'll say. I think it goes down to pushing boundaries. And I'll go back to what I said earlier around protecting the integrity of the brand, which I also know is a very diplomatic thing to say.
Yeah.
But I think that, for a brand like Archidec, that does have the market presence and awareness that it does, it becomes, okay, what's core to the business? What have we cared about? What's been tried and true for the last X amount of years? And then how do we evolve that? And how do we continue to meet our consumers as their needs change and evolve? And they are. And so I think it comes down to pushing boundaries. And I would say for our mature brands more than our incubation brands, it's actually a little bit more challenging, right? Because it's a brand that's been really high performing, but also set in its ways. And so, as brands mature, it becomes this if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of mentality sometimes. And so as marketers, it's our responsibility to continue to push those boundaries and to really lead with high influence around here's why we need to make a change and here's how that's going to happen. And then I think for the newer brands, it goes back to patience and setting expectations, especially with our franchisee owners, that building a business that has the legacy and the equity that some of our larger brands do, it just takes time. And it's this constant pressure applied relentlessly, which my husband, it's a term that he taught me years ago. And I like to say, but it is really just focusing on what works, keeping things simple, and making sure that, one, you're pivoting away from things that aren't working quickly, but two, giving the things time to breathe, right? And time to grow and develop, because some marketing verticals just simply take time.
Yeah. I mean, marketing is an investment, right? Like it genuinely does. It's very infrequent you're going to see that result the next day. As you've just come in, large franchise system, you're the new CMO. Recommend to other marketers, like, how do you go about influencing change, right? I think it's a really hard thing to do, especially with more established brands, like to be the new face and to have a new perspective or paradigm. What's your strategy there? Like, how do you go about influencing your change? And it's probably you're just getting to the point where that may just be starting, 90 days in. I'm sure you took your 90 days to take the lay of the land and everything, but how do you, moving forward as the new role, push things, right?
Yeah, this might be maybe a non-traditional answer, but the one I'll give is advice to other marketers: know your way around a P&L. And if you can influence business decisions based on how they will impact bottom line performance, you will win. And so I think it's about changing this mentality that marketing is just arts and crafts and fun and all these, creative minds coming together. It's not. It's not just a cost center. It is a growth driver. And so I think it's really pushing marketers to this is an uncomfortable part of the business for somebody that is, hyper creative sometimes and
jump into Excel. It's a great place to live.
But we need to be there, and we need to, especially in male dominated industries, marketing is usually pretty female dominated. And so you're usually one of the only, women at the table. And so also being able to hold firm and, read your way through a P&L and showcase how marketing can drive value and growth. I think that is advice that I would give time and time again.
Yeah. I so totally agree with that. Like, I think across any function, I would argue, right? Operations, product, obviously finance and everything. But it's just like, at the end of the day, somebody's answering for the bottom line. And if you can show them how you're a positive influence on that, you just become, you generate more authority, you have more influence. It's a way to go.
Yeah, marketing is one of the first areas that gets cut, right?
It absolutely is, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're trying to cost save, marketing is one of the first areas that's impacted, and being able to drive a business case around why it should not be, I think is, critical for the future of marketers.
Well, and I think it's a macroeconomic fantastic time to make that point, right? Because I think with everything that's happening, you're going to see people potentially pull back marketing spend, and that will influence bottom line, to your point.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you guys think about that? Like, do you see economic volatility? Obviously you see it, you've brought it up, but like, how do you communicate assuredness and confidence, through a tumultuous market like that?
Yeah, I think that it's scary times right now,
Sure,
right?
yeah. No, you got to be brave. You got to be
Yeah,
brave.
you do. And I think that what we're really pushing on the marketing side for our business owners, for our franchisees, is to diversify, right?
Hmm.
And so costs are rising, especially across digital channels. It's becoming more and more expensive to drive a lead
Yeah,
through
customer
your
acquisition
pipeline.
cost is just up.
Yep. And so diversification and really going back to the basics and
Mm.
going local. Of course, there's a cost associated with that. Of course, there's time associated
Yeah,
with that. But with the volatility that we see, there is strategy in building your personal brand
100%.
locally that has this longer term impact on your community. And so we're really pushing to go local, which is certainly uncomfortable for a lot of
Yeah.
franchise owners
Oh
because
yeah.
sometimes they just want to operate.
Yeah.
But it's pushing away from putting all of our eggs in a Google basket, right? And making sure that we are really operating
The
with a,
Google Basket is cruel at times. You know, it has its own whimsies, and you're at the beck and call of it. Um,
yeah.
I love that, and I mean, it's our entire philosophy of what we try to do on our end. Like, it's like, hey, the unique advantage you have is you are a small business, even if you're a part of a $1 billion+ sales franchise organization, right? Like, you've got your territory, you can be the guy next door who does roofs, and that's not a bad thing, right?
Mhm.
Like, um, I always talk about that like going to the gym. Like you have to go to the gym regularly. It's super scary when you first go. You don't want to go.
Mhm.
Just post the post, send the email, put the flyer in the door, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you coach your Z's through that, right? Because I do. I think it's like I'm an engineer by training. Like I didn't just come out being outgoing like this. I had to like figure it out, you know? Like
Yeah.
how do you push people, especially the ones that might be more finance or ops,
Yeah.
oriented?
So I think two things come to mind. One is leading by example, and it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable for me too.
Sure.
I've,
Yeah. Hey,
had,
you're doing it. You're on this podcast right now. Well
yep,
done.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I've had a LinkedIn forever, rarely used it,
Mm.
but really realized very quickly stepping into this role, I need to set the example
Yeah.
for our franchisees on showing up.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. And there's many ways to do that
Hmm.
beyond LinkedIn, of course.
Sure.
But two, it's about being authentic. And I think that,
100%.
you've done it. I just said it too. It's uncomfortable. And I
Mm.
think acknowledging that, I think everybody feels uncomfortable, of course,
Oh
when they're
yeah. You
doing
don't just
something
go to
new.
a gym and dance for the first time in seventh
Yeah.
grade and feel comfortable, right? Like.
Yeah. And so unless you are, 100% introvert, it probably there's some discomfort there for everybody. And so I think owning that
Hmm.
and owning, hey, this is who I am, this is how I show up, and owning your different strengths and how
Yeah.
they differentiate you as a business owner, as a member of your community, that's where your power can lie.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's just about, again, going back to bravery, being brave enough to own that and
Yeah.
and finding a really simple way to just get that message out. It does not have to be complicated.
No, it's the touch points, right? Like
Yep.
especially in today's day and age, it's like you need 10, 15 touch points to like really get across to somebody
Yeah.
what you're trying to sell.
Yeah. And to your point around you could be the guy next door that installs roofs. I mean, that's what consumers are leaning toward as
People
well,
trust that
and
nowadays,
yep.
right? Like there's a trust factor that's inherent to that, whether it's right or wrong. It just
Yeah.
is, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so our franchisees are uniquely positioned today
yeah,
to really harness that.
yeah,
The ones that do it and do it consistently will be the ones that win.
yeah.
And, we'll be here to help those that it does feel a little bit more uncomfortable
Mm.
and sticky initially, but we'll get them there. And that's really what we're here to do at the end of the day.
Yeah. What's the tactics there, right? Are you doing self case studies on like a franchisee that's done this really effectively and like
Mhm.
here's what they did, here's the results they saw, or like is it webinars where it's like, hey, let's coach up on this, like
Mhm.
what kind of tools are you using to accomplish that?
So many. And I really, the intent there is because everybody learns differently, right? And
100%. Yeah.
webinars would be one way. We have a national conference every year where we
Mhm.
do breakout sessions, so that's certainly an area too. We have peer learning groups. We're
I love
sharing
that. Yeah.
across systems around, hey, franchisees are doing this right, or doing this
Yeah.
one thing really, really well, and so sharing that with others to kind of evoke some competition as well.
100%. Yeah.
Um, and then enablement, of course. And so one of the areas that I'll be focused on coming into this role is building a system
Mm.
for standardized holistic enablement materials for our franchisees,
Hmm.
to really dive in based on, where they're at today in terms of their marketing understanding,
Yeah.
to grow in the right ways,
Yeah.
because again, it does look a little bit different for everybody.
Yeah, I'm such a nerd. I love documentation like that
Yeah.
where you could just build a beautiful system,
Yep.
and it's like, no, it's right here. Just go right here to page 12.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. I'm assuming that's the a big issue on your plate right now is kind of taking that next step across all the brands and enabling people in that way.
Yeah, it's about supporting them through a really scary time. I think
Yeah,
that's the biggest challenge, is how do you very quickly earn hearts and minds, or win
yeah,
hearts and minds,
yeah.
and then drive action and influence across each of our systems.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, Curious, like diving just a little once more into having the multiple brands. Like you've got this unique perspective, right? You can see the data and everything from 10 brands inside a single industry. What are the one or two things that are working ubiquitously right now across your brands, right? That is a consistent force of good right now for you.
Yeah, I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's an omni-channel approach.
Yeah.
It's the growth that we're seeing is no longer coming from one single
Hmm.
channel,
Yeah.
which again, COVID times, it just changed everything. And so you
100%.
really could lean into a high paid media strategy and win.
Yeah.
But really what we're seeing very consistently is diversification and
Hmm.
having a balanced marketing mix. It varies a little bit,
Sure.
based on market, and based on industry, but that diversity of how we're allocating our marketing dollars is a consistent theme around what's working really well.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it continues to grow over the next few years. I feel like it is in flux right now, which is a part of the fear, and so it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
5 years from now, we'll look back and be like, "Oh wow, we were really wrong or right about
Yeah,
that."
I'm sure. And that's one thing too, right? It's in terms of gaining influence and a sense of trust with our systems,
Yeah,
you're met with a lot of, but this has always worked this way, or
right. You're like,
this.
hear me out. Conditions have changed.
Yeah, and so it is setting those expectations, and especially in the marketing world,
Yeah,
things do change at such a rapid pace, almost by the hour sometimes.
100%.
And so, making sure that we are creating a culture that is okay with that, and that
Yeah,
understands that,
yeah.
and can be comfortable, with change, is I think
It's
really key
resilience,
here.
right? I
Yep.
think like resilience and bravery become exceedingly important in times of flux like this. I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And making sure again that we are protecting ourselves
Yeah.
from an online only presence, and
Hmm.
owning our data in some way, shape, or form too, and getting that from other channels is really important.
Yeah, I think kind of a final question along these lines. I I think a lot of what you're saying it's fascinating because you are very data driven. I can tell you make every decision with data. I bet you have a beautiful dashboard. Um, but you also explain the narrative side of this. Like it is storytelling. Like you don't just put data in front of a Z and expect them to know. Like you
Hmm.
clearly are really really good at weaving that narrative of like this is why this matters. What's your process there? How do you think about building that? Because I think as a marketer, in my opinion, that's like the core of everything. You're selling your CEO, you're selling the board, you're selling your Z's, you're selling the consumer, and it's all narrative, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's about, and I think one of my strengths is about packaging up a
Hmm.
story through numbers, and being
Yeah,
able to drive a narrative through
yeah,
through that, right? And so it is being able to turn data into, again, action or a story,
hmm,
because at the end of the day, um, we're serving our franchisees as a platform, and then our franchisees are serving the end customer. The end customer does not care about what our
could care less
KPIs
about
are.
Empower brands.
or, yeah,
Yeah,
or so I think it's about making sure that no matter what data points we see and actions that we take, are they tethered to the mission and
yeah,
the voice of the brand
yeah,
itself, and are our actions in alignment with who that brand is, who our customers are, and who our franchisees are.
yeah.
So it's turning action into insights, and doing it in an eloquent way so that it resonates for all audiences.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. Moving forward to our next section, we like to do some quick hitters. Basically, 10, 15-second answers, first thing that comes to your mind. How does that sound?
the first word that comes to my mind is I'm going to stumble here because I'm going to overanalyze
So
everything.
your first word is stumble. Okay, good. It's like a Rorschach test now. You know what I mean? Okay, cool. We'll start easy. Best piece of career advice you've been given.
Leave somebody's day better than you found it.
I love that.
From
That's a great one.
an old chief growth officer of mine who served as a boss and mentor for several years, always said, leave somebody's day better than you found it. And I think it is about, at the end of the day, nobody's going to look back on what you did, or that will be a small part of your story. It's really
Yeah.
going to be about the impression that you made and how
Yeah.
you made other people
How they
feel.
remember feeling about you, right?
Yep.
I love that. What brand outside of Empower Brands within the franchise space do you most admire? Do you think the brand is awesome, dope, exciting?
Well, that's a good question. Um, the first thing that comes to mind is tropical smoothie.
Okay, I love that. Yeah. So why? Give them some kudos.
Yeah, I think I'm a big health nut, as
Mm,
again a thread that you can pull through
yeah.
my life here, but consistent results, right? When going
Yeah.
into a store,
Something
getting
beautiful about that, right?
yeah. So setting expectations and then meeting them.
Yeah. What's a book or resource that's impacted your marketing philosophy?
Um, you know, A book the first one that comes to mind is a book called CEO Excellence. I don't.
See.
There's multiple authors for the book,
Hmm.
and so I think from a marketing standpoint, again, going back to the P&L conversation, it is so
Yeah.
important to just not pigeonhole yourself in marketing.
Hmm.
And so I've always been super interested in operations and executive leadership, and so I think expanding horizons beyond just being a really great marketer
Yeah.
has been pivotal for me and something that I've just always been really interested in.
Yeah. I love that. Most overrated trend in marketing right now.
AI is the first thing that comes to
Oh
mind.
yeah. Oh god.
No. I'll tell you what I mean by that. I say that because I think it's what everybody goes to
Sure.
when asked what are the upcoming trends. I think there's AI is going to be such a key driver in
Yeah.
how this landscape evolves. Um, but I think it needs to be thoughtful, and I
Yeah.
think that it needs to be strategic. And so I think that there's a lot of shiny objects, and I think it's easy for somebody to say this is going to change how we operate and win as a business. But I
Yeah.
think it's about the strategy and why you're leaning into AI and how that impacts your customers and your team. That's really what needs to be the focus.
Yeah, it's definitely at its like peak adoption curve, right? When it's like my mom is asking me about ChatGPT, we have a problem. My argument has always been that early adoption is never the right adoption because it's not deep enough to be in a workflow. And
Interesting.
the
Okay.
only thing that matters is you don't want your workflow to change. You just want better results out of that workflow. That might be more time, more
Yep.
money, whatever it is, but it needs to live in there. And I think
100%.
that's my philosophy is we're kind of in the beginning stages of that. You're starting to see AI become functionally workflow oriented.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
when it gets exciting. I'm
Yeah.
obviously super biased. Everybody, there's AI like in my screen right now, so like,
No, and look, I'm a massive proponent of it.
yeah,
Use it every day. I think it's just about how you use it, and it can't
yeah.
be a go-to response when asked, "How are we going to change our
Oh,
business?"
well, yeah.
Right?
It's also like it's such a stupid blasé answer right now, right? It's just like AI, cool shade. It's the Wizard of Oz. Um, Beautiful. And then a final quick hitter. One thing people don't know about you. I feel like we've gotten fun tidbits. We've got athlete, we've got college, global business. What's something people don't know about you?
Oh, that's a good one. I guess the what I'll share, people that are close to me, of course, know this, but for those listening, maybe not have not guessed, I'm super introverted,
Yeah.
and I think that's tough as a marketer, being introverted. And so, I think going outside of my comfort zone,
Mm,
again, something that has been incredibly pivotal to my career is just turning it on when you need to be on and being
yeah.
100% there, and then finding time to decompress outside of
Yeah.
work has been really critical, of
Yeah.
course. But I think a lot of people, when I say, yeah, I'm so introverted and,
They're like, aren't
super
you like the face of like 10 brands right now?
like, yeah. So that's something that certainly doesn't come natural, but I
Yeah.
think is, critical in this type of position and for
I
marketers, in general, typically.
Yeah, I feel it. I am 100% also introverted. You would never guess it, but like for me, it's like, and my wife. So my wife's a clinical psychologist, so that's my
Okay.
unlock. And I'll just go home and I'll be like, it needs to just be me and a book or
Yeah.
something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Yeah.
just can't talk to anybody right now. Awesome. Well, that was the hard part. Next, I always like to give the guest the podium. Sell us what you want to sell. Where can people find you? What should they know about Empower? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think so. Empower Brands leading platform in the franchising space and the commercial and residential service space. So incredibly thrilled to be here. I've just started a LinkedIn newsletter
You
that
said that with so much confidence, it
you
was
know what?
crazy.
Well, I said it because I can't even remember the name of it
Oh
at this point in time.
no.
And so I'm really doing myself a disservice here. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Felicia Reeves, and, started a newsletter to really talk about a lot of what we shared today.
Signals and strategy, everybody. Published
Signals and
monthly.
strategy, published monthly. So I'm in one article right now, but it really is about sharing some of these insights that we talked about today and
Yeah.
really empowering franchisees to grow and go local. So
I love that. Well, you've gotten an additional subscriber just now. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. We always appreciate it. Thanks for being on.
yeah, thank you so much. Had a great time.
Absolutely. And everybody else, thank you for listening or watching Behind the Franchise. It's been great having Felicia Reeves of Empower Brands on. I feel like learned a lot. Like this was great. Like I love just people in your position because you have such insight across an industry, but then also across a lot of brands. Like you can share so much. So I'm excited for Signals and Strategy was what we have it called. So I'm excited for that. And thank you again, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much.